this is a very kind of a throwback in some ways to like Agatha Christie.
You're right about that. It's, I think, intentionally modeled on the Golden Age English detective novel, which I've always liked very much as entertainment. Agatha Christie, Niall Marsh, wonderful village country house murders in the closed environment. And it occurred to me quite early on, after Flavia had already appeared as a character, that she was in an absolutely unique position to be an investigator, because who pays any attention to an 11-year-old? 11-year-olds are traditionally completely invisible and totally ignored. So she had carte blanche to go anywhere and ask anybody anything, and people would talk quite openly in front of her because no one had the faintest idea that she could possibly be doing anything with this information.
So tell me about her two sisters and her dad.
Flavia's father is Colonel De Luce, who owns a house called Buckshaw, which has been in the family since Noah was a sailor. It's been forever. It's actually one of several houses that has been on the site. And this particular house that Flavia lives in, which is called Buckshaw, had been built following a fire of an earlier house on the site by a couple of very strange uncles who were constantly in disagreement over some obscure point of military strategy during the Napoleonic Wars, and they had stopped speaking to one another, and they had caused to be painted a black line down the middle of the foyer, and one wing belonged to the one brother and the other wing belonged to the other, and there was this complete lack of communication between the two, which still exists because Flavia lives in the east wing of the house by choice. She has a wonderfully professionally equipped chemical lab that once belonged to her great uncle Tarquin De Luce. Flavia has discovered it, moved into the East Wing, really taught herself chemistry from Uncle Tar's notes and poring over all of his textbooks, and she's become a frighteningly well-equipped chemist, but her interest is in poisons. She realizes that poisons are something that gives a person great power. Father and the other two sisters live in the West Wing, which is heated. Father is in some form of grief. Flavia's mother has vanished during a mountain climbing expedition when Flavia was a year old, so Flavia has never known her mother, but Buckshaw is haunted by memories of Harriet, things that belong to Harriet. Harriet's old Rolls Royce is kept in the coach house and sits covered with dust. And Flavia goes and sits in it when she wants to be alone. It's kind of like a chapel of sanctuary for her, as her mother's old Rolls Royce. And the two older sisters are Ophelia and Daphne. That's Feely and Daffy, as Flavia calls them. And the two older girls hardly ever interact with Flavia except to try to convince her that she's adopted, that she's not really their sister.
Flavia is very bright. She knows a lot about chemistry, but then there are these huge holes
About sex.
Just like a real 11-year-old would. Just when you think she can do everything, she can't.
Right. Well, I've always been very intrigued by that 11-year-old intensity, and it only just occurred to me today that it might be unique to 11-year-olds. I'm not sure if it's present in 10-year-olds. It might be, but I know for sure that 11-year-olds are capable of this searchlight intensity of focus to the exclusion of the entire universe. And I thought it would be nice to try and capture that with this girl who is in love with chemistry and the capabilities of chemistry, which kind of represent the future in a way.
You seem to be fond of long titles. Your last one was The Sweetness at the Bottom of the Pie, and this is The Weed That Strings the Hangman's Bag. It took me a bit to figure out what that weed was, but It is the weed for which weed is named.
It is, yes, yeah. And we see how long it's been around. For a long time, the epigraph in the book is from Sir Walter Raleigh, and he's admonishing his wayward son about what kind of grief you can come to when certain things associate with one another. And one of them is scoundrel, and another one is the weed. And Sir Walter points out that these things weave very nicely into the rope that the hangman uses.
Well, I'm now hooked on the series. The book is The Weed That Strings the Hangman's Bag. I've been speaking with the novelist Alan Bradley, and The Weed That Strings the Hangman's Bag is published by Doubleday Canada.